saints of VIP, and anybody else who might be joining me today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Today I'd like to do things just a little bit differently. Today I'd like to give a quick history lesson on the Dead Sea Scrolls. This was a topic that I knew a little bit about, but I've recently learned quite a bit more, and it is very, very interesting and also important to us as Christians. And I'll go over that in a little bit. So the Dead Sea Scrolls is probably something that many of you have heard of, but I'm just going to talk about the 6 W's, go over the 6 W's. What, when, where, who, why, and how. So what are the Dead Sea Scrolls? Basically, they are the books of the Old Testament, and each book would have been written on its own scroll, and these were rolled up and sealed inside earthenware jars. They were written around 250 BC. These copies were written around 250 BC, and they were written by a group of Jewish people called the Essenes. Now these people they lived in a compound sort of like monks. They lived separate from the rest of the Jewish community, and they separated themselves to try and get away from the Greek influence on Jewish culture. And these were people that absolutely loved the Word. And when they separated from the rest of the Jewish people, they founded a town called Qumran. This was an ancient community that is located in historical Israel. So in around 130 AD, there was quite a bit of political unrest in the area. There was a Jewish revolt, and it ended up being successful, and the Jewish people gained their freedom, and there was a Jewish city-state, but eventually it was crushed by Rome, and Rome put in very, very steep penalties and persecuted the Jewish nation. And during that time, the Essenes, their writing stopped, and that is when scholars believe they hid these Dead Sea Scrolls and fled their compound, or their community, sorry. And they stashed these scrolls, like I said, in earthenware jars and then in caves. So, flash forward to the late 1940s, just after World War II had ended. The first of these scrolls was found. And it was found by 2 Bedouin shepherd boys named Juma and Muhammad Adib. They were goat herders, and as they were herding their goats, they were throwing rocks into caves and heard something break, something that sounded like pottery, and they went to investigate, and they found the book of Isaiah. And over the next year, archaeologists, scholars flocked to this area and began to uncover more and more caves with more and more of these scrolls in them. And over the next about decade, they found basically the whole Old Testament. Now I say basically because Esther was missing. They were unable to find the book of Esther, but there is a compelling cultural reason why that might be. There is a Jewish festival called Purim. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. During that festival, there is a public reading of the book of Esther. And every Jewish family would have their own copy, and read along during this festival. So while the Essenes were fleeing, they would have took the Book of Esther with them just in case they had to celebrate this festival without time to get back, if they had to celebrate before they had a chance to get back. Also, in the Dead Sea Scrolls, there was a lot of commentary found. So a lot of scholarly opinions and insights, which I have yet to read, but I definitely will be. I think it will be very interesting to learn what the people of that time, how they interpreted it, to look at it through their cultural lens, and knowing the things that were going on around them. So, now on to why it is important. And it is important as a cross-reference, I'll say. So I have talked to a few people that have questioned the validity or the accuracy of the Bible because there are so many different translations. I've heard those exact words. Well, there are so many different translations that how do you know if the original intent or the original meaning is still preserved? And we can look at these texts written in 250 BC. That is hundreds or maybe even 1,000 years after the original Old Testament books were written, depending on the book. And we can compare them with our King James Version, our current version, which was written in the early 1600s. And the amazing thing is, or not the amazing thing actually, but what we would expect, the word has been unchanged. So the Dead Sea Scrolls match up to the Old Testament about 95%. The only major differences are some little changes in spelling and some changes in grammar. But biblical scholars have gone through the translations and they see no change in meaning or content. But over 1,000 or 100 years is very common for grammar or spelling of a word to change a little bit. So that is why I found this so interesting, because it was found nearly 2,000 years, actually over 2,000 years after it was written, and still matches up perfectly with what the King James Version says, written over 400 years ago. So these texts lend validity, credibility, and they're a testament to the accuracy of the Old Testament that we still have today. So thank you very much for joining me today. I hope that you learned something. I hope you found this interesting, and I pray that God would continue to bless and strengthen each and every one of you. Thank you.